Hello, my name is Pia and this video is for Bmgt409. I'm here to report my findings from my cross-cultural interview. My subject is Melissa. She's 25 years old and she's from Holland. She has lived in the United States for only 2.5 years. She moved here to marry her husband, whom she met online. We talked about her background, education, work, and some traditions. And I discovered that the Dutch culture is close to the American culture, but is very, very different from the Filipino culture. When Melissa was born, her parents were not married yet. She was 4 when they got married, and then a couple of years later, they had another child. So she has a sister. They lived on their own, but they lived close to family members. She said that it's Dutch tradition to visit your grandparents at least once a week, so she visited her grandparents every weekend. In the Filipino culture, many of us cohabitate. So we live with extended family members, so that's a big difference right there. And then also, in the Filipino culture, most of the times, they want you to get married before the child is born first. So that's a big difference too. Melissa's parents divorced when she was 17, unfortunately. And she moved out of the house at 18 and she moved to the city. And then several years later, that's when she moved to the United States. She described her childhood as very free. She didn't have very many rules to follow. Her parents did not raise her with any religion. That's very different from the Filipino culture, which is very, very strict, lots of rules, and religion was very, very important in our household. So that's a huge difference there as well. As far as education is concerned, in the Dutch culture, you are given a test when you're 12 years old, and that determines your educational track. And their high school has 3 different levels, and then there's 2 different levels of college, and then there's the university. And that's pretty complicated to explain. And so in a nutshell, this test determines where you're placed. And children are required to go to school until you're 18 years old. But college education is free. So that's very different from the Filipino culture, where we only go to school until 16. It's actually not even mandatory to go to school. A lot of people are not able to afford school. And also, to get a quality education in the Philippines, you have to go to a private school as opposed to a public school. So private schools are expensive, so if you cannot afford it, you don't send your kids to school, or you just send them to public school, and that's not very good education that you get there, unfortunately. And then also the college or the there's no college or university. It's the same in the Philippines. It's your basic, 4 to 5 years in college, but in the Dutch culture, there's 4 years of college and then another 6 years for university. So I guess their university is like law school or med school. So anyway, in the Dutch culture, they assign it to you, but they provide free education until you graduate the university, if that's what you want to do. If you don't finish the goals that they set for you, let's say you quit midway through college, you're supposed to pay them back. But if not, they actually provide kind of like a loan forgiveness for completing the educational track. So that's very different. We don't have that in the Philippines. As far as work is concerned, the Dutch have a very, very strict work ethic, just like the Filipino culture. But in the Dutch culture, they have permanent jobs. So after about 2 years of employment, they're offered lifetime job. In the Philippines, that does not exist. So what happens in the Dutch culture is that provides a very stable life life, and there aren't very many poor people in Holland as a result of that. In the Philippines, there's no such thing as a contract, and so you can lose your job whenever. And there's a lot of people who are poor and homeless. The society is very bipolar. Either you're rich or you're poor. In the Dutch, it's not that way. There are many people who can afford. As a matter of fact, less than 3% of people are homeless in Holland. So that's a big difference right there. You know, more importantly, what I discovered here that I want to talk about is the feelings that I had when I was doing this interview. Number one is I kind of had a little struggle between what culture I'm going to identify with. I was born in the Philippines. I moved here when I was 12. So I was still young, and so I've been here way more than half of my lifetime. Yet somehow I'm still very tied to my Filipino culture. And I actually couldn't even figure out which culture I'm going to identify with as far as this homework is concerned. So that was kind of weird, because I didn't even know what culture I identified with, but you know, no big deal. It's a mixture, so I'm lucky to be able to have that. And then the other thing is that my reaction to the free education to me was like, wow, I wish I had that. But then I realized there's not very much freedom in the Dutch culture, although education is free, but they assign you your goals, so you don't really have a choice. What if you change your mind? Then you have to pay them back, you know, so it's really not free. So why not start free? As you know, why not start on what you want anyway? And so I kind of like the freedom more than the Dutch. But so those are the two different reactions I had in this paper, or in this homework. I had a lot of fun doing this homework, and I realized that you know, even if we think that we are pretty open-minded about things, when we learn, you know, little things that are different from what we're used to, it kind of makes us feel uncomfortable. For a minute, you know, I was uncomfortable, especially because I couldn't even identify with whatever culture I was with. So I was just like, all right, that's weird. But anyway, very fun. And I am so happy that I was able to learn more about another culture. All right, well, you guys take care. Talk to you soon.